did you learn to fight like that?
It was long ago. Sold into slavery, he wouldn't give up until he found a way to win back his honor. The Quest.
In 1996, action star Jean-Claude Van Damme stepped behind the camera for the very first time. After nearly a decade of high-flying spinning kicks, underground tournaments, and splits as far as the eye can see, Van Damme directed a film that attempted to feel epic, something mythical, global, and steeped in martial arts tradition. That film was The Quest. But for many audiences, it may have felt familiar. Because nearly 8 years earlier, Van Damme had exploded onto the international stage with Bloodsport, a film about a Western fighter traveling to Asia to compete in a secret tournament called the Kumite. Then in The Quest, he was once again playing a Western fighter traveling to Asia to compete in the secret martial arts tournament, this time called the Gang Gang.
Welcome to Gang.
So, what exactly was The Quest? A spiritual successor? A remake in disguise? Let's go back to 1996, shall we? Jean-Claude Van Damme got his start in B-movies from Cannon Films, dating back to a blink and you'll miss it appearance in the first Break-In. But one Cannon movie would catapult Van Damme into becoming the new hot action star of the 80s. He starred as real-life full-contact fighter Frank Dukes in the 1988 movie Bloodsport, which became an iconic martial arts film and a seminal fighting tournament movie, in which future tournament movies would often be compared to. Bloodsport was based on the life of the real Frank Dukes, and he and Van Damme had naturally formed a good working partnership with that film. For Van Damme, the concept of an underground fighting tournament was one that stuck with him. While he had something like Lionheart, a film that took him through another kind of fighting circuit, Van Damme had a vision of doing a film of the same kind of martial arts contest like Bloodsport, but as a grander global epic. Bloodsport had all of the puzzle pieces that Van Damme wanted to preserve for The Quest. He would play a fighter representing America. He travels to an exotic land for a tournament that is rumored to exist. All the other participants in the tournament have traveled from around the world and are trained in a unique style from their country of origin. The fighters compete for a priceless artifact, and the final opponent is the classic archetype of a hulking, unbeatable Goliath who is someone that could make the muscular and nimble Van Damme look like an underdog. The Quest began as an ambitious idea for the action star. It wasn't just another fight movie, but a passion project he intended to make as a statement piece, and, around the time of the late 90s, a kind of a farewell to the martial arts genre that made him a star. In an archival candid interview with the French publication Liberation, Van Damme would bluntly reveal, "I really wanted to quit before the Grand Tournament," which is the French title for The Quest. "I was fed up with Hollywood, with life, with people, with money." He continued, "Now I'm starting different things. The Grand Tournament is a farewell to my earlier films, with a bit more scope and story." Around the time that Van Damme made Street Fighter, his drug habits and personal problems were pretty well known in Hollywood circles, especially with his behavior behind the scenes on Street Fighter. So it's understandable that he may have had enough of the celebrity machine and was thinking of possibly going all out for one final big project, which would in turn serve as a tribute and a celebration to his breakout in Bloodsport. Van Damme aimed to create a film blending the secret tournament concept along with the epic sweep of classic adventure films. He himself would even refer to his passion project as the Ben-Hur of martial arts films. The story evolved from an earlier screenplay tied to Bloodsport lore. That screenplay was something martial artist Frank Dukes had claimed that he and Van Damme had written in 1991, titled The Kumite, Enter the New Dragon. This formed the basis of what would eventually become The Quest. Unfortunately, the pair would butt heads in a conflict that became heated, although no real kicks were actually thrown. Dukes had taken Van Damme to court in a legal battle over writing credit and payments that he says the Bloodsport star had owed to him. The trial was actually covered by Court TV, and footage from the court case can currently be seen on YouTube, including over an hour of Dukes' testimony as he took the stand, courtesy of the Martial Arts Enterprises FightCon channel. Ultimately, Dukes would win a story credit through the Writers Guild of America, and when you watch the film, his name is right alongside Van Damme's. However, Stephen Klein and Paul Mones are credited as writing the script. The project was originally developed at Epic Productions under the working title Enter the New Dragon in the early 1990s. Moshe Diamond, Van Damme's longtime producer, would lead the development there, intending for the production to start filming around 1993 for a release on Christmas 1994. But financial troubles at Epic would delay everything. Diamond lost control of the project at Epic following a power struggle with the French financiers. So, the project shifted instead to his newly founded company, Signature Films. There, the movie was rebranded with the title The Quest and was presented at the 1993 Cannes Film Market. Despite being a personal project for Van Damme, he initially didn't intend to direct the film. Instead, he was interested in collaborating with Andrei Konchalovsky. Konchalovsky's resume included critically beloved movies like Uncle Vanya and Runaway Train. However, he's also worked on more commercial films, like Homer and Eddie and Tango and Cash. Discussions for Konchalovsky to helm The Quest would never take shape. Van Damme invited his former collaborator, Sheldon Lettich, to co-direct the film, but Lettich would opt out and Van Damme would take on the directing duties himself. Now helming the project himself, he would also bring along second unit director Peter MacDonald and cinematographer David Gribble to help mold the film after he became impressed with their work on Nowhere to Run, a movie which held back immensely on the action and showcased Van Damme in more of a dramatic light. As he brought in familiar faces from his past films, Van Damme would also cast Abdel Kisi to play the intimidating challenger from Mongolia. The final fight would be a rematch for the two fighters as they previously fought in the main event match in the finale of Lionheart. Additionally, his work with Kisi extends to his family, as Abdel's brother, Michel, is known to audiences as the notorious Muay Thai fighter Tong Po from Kickboxer. Van Damme envisioned The Quest as an epic throwback adventure, something closer to a swashbuckling classic than a gritty 80s fight film. The 1920s setting, the globe-trotting adventure, the mystical tournament. It was bigger in scope than Bloodsport. Despite the obvious parallels, The Quest does its damnedest to secure its own identity. The 1920s period setting gives the film more of a pulp adventure tone, almost like an Indiana Jones martial arts spin-off. Additionally, instead of Van Damme taking center stage, the movie features more of an ensemble cast, including Roger Moore as Lord Edgar Dobbs. Dobbs is a charming arms dealer and gambler who adds a playful tone. This was a major get for Van Damme, having a former James Bond in his directorial debut. The rest of the characters include American boxer Maxie Devine, played by James Remar, known for The Warriors, 48 Hours, and Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Lord Dobbs' secondary, Henry Smythe, played by character actor Jack McGee, and reporter Carrie Newton, played by Janet Gunn. However, Van Damme was originally eyeing Madonna for that role. The fights in this movie are more theatrical and choreographed, leaning into spectacle rather than raw brutality. The Quest sports a PG-13 rating. It's apparent that Van Damme wanted this film to be enjoyed by a wider audience, and so the violence is majorly toned down. There isn't an overwhelming amount of blood or protruding bones like Bloodsport proudly displayed. Unfortunately for Van Damme, the production would almost be as bad as the one for Street Fighter. According to Roger Moore, who had later voiced his displeasure of working on the film, the shoot was poorly organized. Van Damme's frequent lateness and pressure to finish on time would be so bad that it got to the point of crew members being asked to work extra hours without pay, which angered many and nearly caused a strike on set. Roger Moore and others believed that Van Damme was out of his depth as a director, with Peter MacDonald carrying much of the practical filmmaking workload. Fight choreographer Stephen Lambert also had creative tensions with Van Damme, especially over how fights should play out and which moves to showcase, including debates over the signature spin kicks from the star. After an ambitious vision proved to be a very difficult thing to accomplish for a first-time director, the Quest didn't turn out to be a complete disaster. There are shades of an epic there, but the budget, which Van Damme claimed to be about $12 million, didn't allow room for the movie to breathe, and large set pieces, like a planned major horseback battle, had to be cut out of the film. The movie is still a fun watch, even if the grand adventure that was intended ended up being rushed through. The first half is paced pretty well, and gives us a suitable adventure on a global scale, with sequences on the high seas and exotic locales. Our ensemble comes together like clockwork, like in other films like these, as we join our hero on his odyssey and he encounters colorful characters along the way. It's the tournament portion in the second half where Van Damme shifts all focus to the fighting. Van Damme, perhaps unintentionally, broke the mold of the usual story beats in a movie of this nature. When sports films usually tell the plot of a tournament, they highlight several important matches, then show everything else in a montage. Hell, it's how we get one of the greatest montages ever, with Stan Bush's Fight to Survive blasting in Bloodsport. With The Quest, Van Damme does something bold and opts to show the whole tournament in its entirety. However, to do this with its 95-minute runtime, all the fights, with the 16 combatants in total, barely break a minute in length. But to be fair, we do get some pretty thrilling fights in that time frame. And it's fun to see all the different styles that come from their representative countries and cultures. Sometimes the fighters are a bit hilariously on the nose, but it's all in good fun. It's the kind of stereotypes you find in Nintendo's Punch-Out! Highlights include a capoeira fighter from Brazil and a kung fu fighter from China using different animal styles for each opponent.
Tiger.
The Quest performed modestly at the box office, grossing around $57.4 million worldwide. While it has its parallels to Bloodsport, just a year prior, the Mortal Kombat movie would hit big screens, and that film would also sport the concept of a big mystical fighting tournament. 1995's Mortal Kombat scored big with fans as it transferred the fun intensity of the video games to the big screen. In an age when Mortal Kombat infused Hollywood action with more Asian influence, coupled with Jackie Chan's big crossover into America with Rumble in the Bronx's release, The genre was getting redefined. Although the quest featured a lot of that, Van Damme's brute force style looked to be on the way out. The quest still has the potential to be the epic Van Damme envisioned it to be. While it didn't get to be completely realized, it's still a nice tribute to a past era of adventure and action. If you get the right director, it might just be ripe for a remake or a reboot.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.